How has the apology been perceived by members and leaders of the Indigenous community? Well, Assembly of First Nations National Chief RoseAnne Archibald is in Edmonton and she joins me now. National Chief, thank you for joining me.
Hi, David.
I'd like to start, if I could, with your assessment of the Pope's apology. What were your thoughts as he spoke?
Well, I was very hopeful, and I do want to say that he has met the TRC call to action number 58, where he came to Turtle Island, also known as Canada, to offer that apology on in one of our territories. And today was significant because it was at the site of one of the former institutions of assimilation and genocide. And so it did fall short, as you said. It was not on behalf of the Catholic Church, which is what we were all hoping for. And he also didn't address a couple of key issues, one of them being the doctrine of discovery, which we have been asking for generations now. I'm not the first national chief to ask for the doctrine of discovery to be rescinded, and I certainly won't be the last, and that didn't make it into his speech at all. And he also didn't address genocide. You know, thousands and thousands of our children died in these institutions. And I'm not sure why you can't address that. I mean, to me, that is genocide when thousands of children die. And so, you know, it fell short. At the same time, you know, I woke up this morning thinking about my mom, who went to St. Anne's, as well as three of my siblings. My older sister died there. And so there's a lot of trauma, and I'm an intergenerational trauma survivor as well. And, you know, I thought about her and how she would feel about being able to see the Pope issue this apology. And what I appreciated about what he said is he said, "I am very sorry." And he said it a couple of times. And I think that to me is a step forward, but those are just words, right? We need action beyond that. And he also alluded to that as well. He talked a little bit about, you know, this is just the first step. He talked about an investigation. So what does that mean? Is that like an investigation with the church? We have been calling for an international independent investigation into this situation. So is he supporting that? He kind of raised more questions in some parts of his speech.
I just want to jump in if I can, because obviously, you know, your answer, this is a complicated day, right? In that an apology can satisfy the demands of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but still fall short in some ways, be deficient in some ways. And just for people who don't know, the doctrine of discovery, and forgive me if I oversimplify this, these are essentially papal edicts from centuries ago that gave the right to colonize and convert to the Christian nations who set out to find the New World, as they called it at the time. And that's not there, right? That's not part of this. And the lack of an apology for the role of the church itself, does that, I know you say it meets the requirement, but does that undermine this in any way? I mean, or is this good enough, the best you could expect, I wonder?
Well, he has a few more days in Canada, so I'm hoping that, you know, my call and other leaders' calls for the revoking the doctrine of discovery is actually met before he leaves, and that he really contemplates our request for the role of the Catholic Church in the destruction of our families, in the destruction of our culture and languages, and in the death of our children. These are important concepts and things that he must begin to integrate into his apology. And so, you know, we won't know until he leaves Canada whether he actually meets any of those criteria for a proper apology, but we're hopeful, always hopeful. And, you know, to get back to my mom, she was Catholic, and, you know, I know she was a very forgiving and loving person. And I know there are Catholic people out there, survivors, who will embrace this, who are willing to forgive, who are willing to move forward. And there are also people who just will not, and it's not good enough. And I'm one of those people. You know, I'm my mother's daughter. At the same time, I think there could have been more, and we deserve more for sure.
What would you have needed to see on a personal level so you could move forward and accept?
Well, the doctrine of discovery is really important because it's not just a document, it's a structure. It encases us as Indigenous people. It still exists. So the idea that terra nullius, which means that the land is empty, that has to be revoked because the land was not empty. We were placed here by the Creator. We have inherent rights. We have God-given rights. We have Creator-given rights with respect to the lands and resources and waters of this country, of Turtle Island. And I think that that's really important to note, that it's not just a document to be sort of torn up and thrown away. It's a construct that needs to be dismantled, because what we're really talking about is colonialism. We're talking about the colonization of this country and how that has been destructive to Indigenous people in Canada, in places like Australia, in the US, and in places around the world. It's a larger issue, and so it really must be revoked. It's a very important part of the healing path forward.
I want to ask you one more question before we say goodbye. And forgive me if this sounds like I'm oversimplifying it, because I know reconciliation is an ongoing and permanent, never-ending process. But where does this fit into that path forward that you're talking about, on that path toward reconciliation? I know you struggle with this, and it's not enough for you. But how do you think this fits into that larger process that we're going through in Canada?
Well, there's a saying that the best apology is changed behavior. And I alluded to this on day one when I got to Edmonton, that there are no roles for women in leadership within the church. I mean, this is a very archaic institute. It's a very archaic religion, and it has to be modernized. And so I think ultimately all of these concepts are very much tied together, and we have to move beyond words. We have to see that action. We need to see the records from the Vatican. We need to see them fulfill what they were supposed to fulfill under the TRC, which is to contribute to healing for First Nations. They were let out of that deal, as you know. So we have to talk about that. We have to talk about the doctrine of discovery. There are many action pieces that have to be put forward and walked forward together. And we also have to talk about the truth. The truth is that Canada is not what people think it is. There's a myth about Canada, but the truth is thousands and thousands of our little ones died in these institutions of assimilation and genocide. And we have to talk about the truth before we can get to reconciliation.
In one last question, I know I said the last, so I'm going to sneak one more in. In terms of the particular relationship with the Catholic Church, you know, the Pope has talked about an investigation, even though there was a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but there is this ongoing call for transparency and disclosure from the Vatican and churches at local levels. He's going to leave at the end of this week, the Pope is. What's the one thing you want to see come next after this visit that could really help towards this the healing part of the process?
There are key actions that have to happen. We need to see those records. We still can't identify some of these little ones that went missing or that died there. That's a really key part of it, is we need to know the truth of the numbers of children that died, who they are, who their families are. That's a really important part of healing. And we need the Catholic Church itself to acknowledge that it has had a role in the destruction of cultures and languages and the deaths of our children. We need that acknowledgement by the church as an institution. So as we move forward, if we can start to walk that healing path forward, it has to be based on truth, telling the truth and acknowledging the truth in this whole scenario that we find ourselves in today, which is we're trying to heal from so much trauma, generations of trauma. And, you know, the Catholic Church itself has to do more than just offer words. National Chief, thank you for sharing your words with us tonight. We appreciate your time. Thank you. Take care.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.